So, with that, welcome officially for the people who are in the room. Hi, Dell, sitting in the back. So, I'm recording this session for those who cannot be here physically, either at this session or the 10 a.m. session. So, we are here, we are gathered here today, folks, to be part of a Canvas pilot group fearlessly led by Steve Sosa. Woohoo! So, first, a little bit about the pilot project. So, the goals of this pilot are not that pop-up. The goals of this pilot are to explore our LMS options. So for some of us, we have been with the same LMS forever. We only know Blackboard. In my case, so I've been here about 5 years now, and Blackboard's been the only LMS that we've had. So I don't know how much greener the grass really is, or if that's the case, or if we have the perfect LMS. So the only way we're going to find that out is to sort of test the waters for other products. The second goal is to take control of content. So by that I mean that during that 5-year span that I've been here at Edmonds, the state has jumped ships a few times and changed LMSs. So the state just recently made another decision, in this case, to go with Canvas, which is great news since we are also considering it as well. But it makes me fearful a little bit of my content and putting all of my eggs in one basket, so to speak. I guess I need to acknowledge this. I will keep the current color scheme. Okay. All right, so with that, I don't want to put all of my eggs in one basket. In this case, all of my eggs in Blackboard. Or if we do decide to switch along with the state, I don't want all of my content necessarily within Canvas, because what if we switch again? Or a lot of us are part-time faculty. We may teach at more than one institution. So if that is the case, then I need my content to work with me, or work the way that I work instead of the way that the college works. So hopefully whatever option I choose allows me that freedom to teach, hopefully as seamlessly as possible, or to be a little bit more fluid. So I want to be less dependent on an actual vendor or an actual product. So I want to take control of that, and I want to utilize cloud computing. So the reason why I put that in there is because if I upload my content to cloud computing, then I can reference it from any LMS that I happen to teach with. So it should make that transition if I teach in more than one institution, or if the college decides to stay with Blackboard or we decide to move. It should make that transition a lot easier if I'm pointing to my content outside of Blackboard or outside of Canvas. So that is the goals, or at least my goals, for taking control of my content. And then lastly, to improve the actual course design. So that's a hard one. Because improving course design means that I actually have to sit down and think about my course and the design of my course. And when I say design, I mean the way it's laid out, and how effective my assignments are. Should I consider using the same textbook or a different textbook? For any instructor who's approaching that just from the textbook angle, they have to consider, what all is tied to the textbook. How vested are they with that one product? And if they consider going to a different textbook, what impact does that have? So sometimes that's great. That impact means that I have to redesign an assignment or recreate a quiz. So I'm also looking at this from the experience of my students. So which one is funner? Which one is easier? Which one requires less thought? So all of that for me is part of the course design. Not necessarily how I lay out my files, but the overall experience of the class. So those are pretty big goals for a week and a half before the quarter starts. With that, we'll go ahead. So the ideal candidate or participant for this pilot project would be interested in improving their course, not simply doing a course copy. So for a lot of instructors, myself included, I've become so familiar with Blackboard and the course that I teach multiple times that it's easier for me to do a course copy, not necessarily to rethink my course, because I'm using the same textbook. So that's probably the first part. And nothing has really changed, drastically. So I have to be willing in this case to consciously improve my course. Next, I have to be able to commit to at least 5 hours before the quarter starts to develop this course. So that means that you'll be looking at all of your content, your files, how you structure things, and then decide how does that transition over to this new LMS, or do I utilize cloud computing? So either way, whatever decision I make, that has a time investment. The ideal candidate should have a collection of content to work with. So hopefully that person has their files. Their lectures are in some sort of content like a PowerPoint, or maybe their assignments are already in a Word document. In my case, mine are not. All of my assignments are written out as text within Blackboard. So when students click on the week and they see the assignment, they see all of the requirements for the assignment within Blackboard. I haven't actually put those assignments or just copy pasted those into a Word document. So that's something that I will need to do on my end. So basically, it's taking a look at all of my files and being able to transition those files from one to the other. So the more files that you have, obviously the easier it will be to do that. You should be able to run semi-independently, so be somewhat computer savvy, and be able to read emails, watch tutorials, etc. So some of this, obviously Dell and I will not be with you the entire time. A lot of this will be happening at whatever hour you happen to be working on course development. That's weekend, midnight. Machiko doesn't sleep, so that's 2 a.m. in some cases. Okay, so the next that person would be able to or expect neither fame nor fortune. Although your students may love you, you may love the result of all of this, but neither fame or fortune are guaranteed, unfortunately. And we are in the wrong business for that anyways. So the role of the TRC in all of this is, first, Dell and I are not the experts. We are only just baby steps ahead of you. I started to play around. I've started to watch a few tutorials, but I'm just in the same stage essentially that you would be in right now considering this. So Dell and I are not necessarily the go-to people right now. You may have a question, and we will probably point you to an online section or an online tutorial to cover that question. But Dell and I right now, we do not know Canvas. We don't have that foundation like we do with Blackboard. So that's a concern that we have because we can't handle everyone coming to us. So it'll be sort of a joint effort. And then lastly, we'll be juggling this pilot along with everything else. This is going to become very apparent on day one of the start of the quarter when the phones start ringing and people start dropping in and they need to do stuff in Blackboard, and then we are doing stuff in Canvas. So this is going to be a juggling act. It's going to be a very interesting process. I 100% have already committed to teaching my course in Canvas during summer. So whether I like it or not, I have to be 2 steps ahead of my students or 2 steps ahead of this pilot project. So I have to see this through. So at least you've got Steve being able to help you out here, and then Dell is looking at this from the administration angle of that LMS. But we are worried. I am worried. This is a lot to take on before the start of a quarter, and summer quarter is condensed. So that's even additional factor I have to weigh in. Instead of weeks, I have to structure my course in a different way. So the keys to the success of this project rely on understanding the similarities and differences of this product. So Canvas, along with every other vendor that put in their RFP to the state, has the same basic feature set. So discussion is discussion is discussion in any LMS. Quizzes, assignments, all of those those fundamental tools, that feature set is the same. This is also mobile friendly, so this has an app, just like Blackboard has an app right now. If you use that, or if your students utilize this, you'll find that Canvas also has an app, and it does some cool things that our current app from Blackboard does not. So we'll get into that later. And then lastly, it gets the job done. So it is a tool. That's my perspective of the tool. I'm not in love with Blackboard or in love with Canvas. They are both tools to get to my content or for the students to get the job done. So I'm not 100% vested in Blackboard. I also recognize, though, that some people are 100% vested in Blackboard. They don't like the idea of change. So I am looking at it, or this pilot is looking at it, a lot of warnings, 4 warnings here, as just a tool to point to my content. So some of the differences with Canvas, obviously, it's a different LMS. It's not the same vendor as Blackboard. Instructure, the company that makes Canvas, has a completely different philosophy. They look, or one of their online promotional commercials is a playoff of Apple's 1984 commercial, where the person is running with the sledgehammer and then throws the sledgehammer at the screen, breaks the screen, and then everybody is awakened. So in this case, Big Brother, the gorilla in the room is Blackboard. They are the established, LMS system. So Canvas is not attempting to do the same thing as Blackboard. They are looking at this from a completely different approach. They're looking at this more from what I've seen from the student experience. So there's like multiple ways of getting notified. As an instructor, I can get an email, a text message, I can get notification from the app on my phone. There are a lot of preferences to the way that it communicates with me, and I choose those. With Blackboard, it's it's email or it's through the LMS. There are not as many notification settings like we'll see. So lastly, it's a different everything. Know that everything is laid out differently. I'm looking at it, from day one here or yesterday, starting to upload some of my content, and I'm scratching my head a little bit because the tools aren't laid out the same way. It's different. I'm having to relearn. So I spent probably an hour yesterday just, I should say, sort of stumbling, falling, and then learning to walk, and then jogging a little bit, feeling somewhat confident. I also did it without watching the right tutorials beforehand. I just wanted to see what would happen if I upload a file. So I'm trying to make mistakes so that I can learn from them and share them with you. And obviously this pilot group will make mistakes, and we should go into this knowing that that will happen. As long as we learn from those mistakes, then it's all good. That's part of the process. So the keys to the success of this are to keep an open mind. Know that this will require a learning curve. For me yesterday, the first 30 minutes of that hour were probably frustration, confusion, and then the next 15 minutes were like, oh, it's possible, sort of seeing the possibilities. And then the last 15 minutes of that hour were becoming a little bit excited about, getting the chance to improve on what I did last time within Blackboard, but maybe I didn't do it the right way, not right way, but the best way. So I'm looking forward to the chance to sort of improve on what I started originally. So you will obviously need to have free time. This will require, nights, weekends, or whenever it is that you do your work. Dell and I are here, obviously, during the week, so you can come and stop by and bounce any ideas off of us. I don't know how much free time it's going to require each individual person. I can't say that. I'd said at least 5 hours before the quarter starts, because that's the least amount of time. If I do nothing but transition the files that I have on my flash drive, or that I have within Blackboard, to Canvas, that should take the least amount of time. And that's the same as I had before. So that's worst case scenario. That is not the way that I'm looking at this, though. I'm sort of looking at what I had before, trying to figure out, do I use the same textbook? If I change, I'm looking at a lot of different things to improve or sort of take this to the next level, doing things differently. And then obviously a desire to redesign course delivery. So I, along with other instructors now, use the LMS, whatever that happens to be. I use Facebook in conjunction with my classes, and then I use an external blog. So I already think a little bit differently about the traditional classroom. I hate that, in classes that I've taken, that the class ends when the bell rings, or when the quarter is over, I lose access to the class, or the textbook is gone. In some cases, I never go back to open up the textbook again because there's no reason to. All those resources, all those links, all the effort that I put in is gone. I'm locked out of the college's system. I don't like that. So instead, in my course, I've started to take baby steps to put some of those resources on the blog so the students always have access to them, and then encourage interaction through Facebook so that builds that community of students outside of the class. Hopefully they're friends way beyond the class is over. In Machiko's case, that's a culture class. So if I take Machiko's Japanese class and I become friends with someone on Facebook, then that friendship would carry on way after the class is over. So I'm looking at the overall learning experience, and that is sort of what I would encourage anyone to do in the redesign of their course. This is not moving files from A to B. This is, in my case, this is a much bigger task that I'm looking at. Alright, so with that, the actual plan. So there is a plan, by the way. We're not just winging it entirely. So my plan is to download content that I have within Blackboard. So I want to mirror that content on a local flash drive. So that's the first step of me taking control of my content. Then I want to create reference documents for everything. So by that I mean that all of that text content that I had within Blackboard, descriptions about the assignment or the full assignment requirements, I want to put that into a Word document so that I can upload that as the assignment reference file. I don't want to type up the same stuff within Canvas because then I'm completely vested in Canvas. Instead, I want to point to the homework file, which they will download for the week. I will then load my documents into the cloud. So I'm not sure what solution that is going to be. If it's Dropbox or if it's Google Docs, it makes the most sense for me to use Google Docs because that's what the college uses. We're all using Google Apps for everything on campus. So there's less of a learning curve if I use Google Apps. I'm already having to learn Canvas and relearn sort of how I'm designing my course. So if I want the least amount of headaches along the way, then I'll probably go with Google Apps or Google Docs for all of my cloud-based storage. So then once I get over to Canvas, then I plan on referencing those cloud-based documents instead of uploading them to Canvas. So again, that's sort of cutting the cord from my dependence on an LMS and pointing the LMS to my content that lives in the cloud. And then lastly, enjoy the freedom of controlling my content. So when I say that halfway jokingly, if I happen to teach at another college that is using an LMS, I'm a part-time, or I moonlight as an instructor here. So if I happen to moonlight at another campus, then I don't care as much, or I'm not thinking after like, oh no, I need to learn Angel, or I need to learn whatever product it is that they're using, or Moodle, or whatever I haven't used before. I'm sort of carrying my content with me wherever I go. So that's my overall plan. Your immediate plan, hopefully this weekend, is to download, collect, or organize your files. Sort of the same things that I've already talked about what I would be doing, like going into the assignment, copying it, putting all that in a Word document, so I have it in that format for the future. I would suggest that you consider file storage options. You do not have to do this, by the way. If you want nothing more than move your files from A to B over to Canvas, then great. But if not, if you want to do this differently, then you would look at online storage options. And if anyone were to ask me, I would probably suggest Google Docs, just because it makes the most sense. It's the least learning curve if you're looking at other online options.
Can I ask a dumb question?
Please feel free to ask a dumb question. There are no dumb questions. Yes.
When you say Google Docs, is that what you mean by the cloud?
Yes. So I mean any documents that live not on my flash drive or not necessarily on my computer that I can access from here, from my mom's house, from a hotel lobby, and still make an edit to assignment number 1 because it lives in the cloud, somewhere over the internet, in Google Docs as the example there. Instead of being restricted to my flash drive, or if I forgot my flash drive, or does my mom have Microsoft Office on her computer or whatever those local restrictions are. So sort of eliminating some of those barriers. Next, gain access to the Canvas system. So there's a specific address there, and we'll go over the access part in just a few minutes here. And then lastly are to watch the introductory videos. So there are short videos there for just about every beginning topic within Canvas. And I'll show you exactly how to access those as well. So we've already created the accounts, so those are ready now. In a few minutes, so we'll actually get you guys into the Canvas system. So your next steps are to come to the TRC for any help with file or folder structure, since that's the first thing that we are tackling. Send an email to the TRC requesting your Canvas access, and obviously if you're here in person, then we'll do that in just a moment. If you're watching this video virtually or over the weekend, then just shoot an email to trc@edcc.edu and we'll send you your username and password so that you can access this over the weekend. Watch at the minimum sort of a few tutorials to understand, is assignments assignments? Is it exactly the same as you thought it was within Blackboard, or what's different? And for each of us, we are going to have an interest in some different area of Canvas. So we may have had a heavy, group focus in Blackboard. So how does that translate over to Canvas? Watch that tutorial would be the answer. That'd be the first answer. And then attend next week's training discussion physically or virtually. So sort of what we're doing right now, except next week it will actually be hands-on. So when we talk about uploading assignments or doing things, we'll do that face-to-face, and I'll record that just like I'm recording it now. It won't be more than an hour maximum, and you can watch those, obviously on your own. So with that, that is the end officially of the presentation. Let me show you what I mean on my flash drive. So if I take a step back here, I have a folder called Classes EDCC, and if I hop into there, sort of these are classes that I have taught in the past and I've sort of stored on my flash drive. So this summer I'm teaching VSCO 135, so I'll go to the last time that I taught VSCO 135 and hop in there. You can see that I also have templates, so VSCO 110 template, VSCO 115 template. So those are courses that I've created or cleaned up as much as possible, so that if I hop into that template I can see week 1, week 2, week 3, and if I go into week 1, I've got some PDF files, a Word document, other PDFs. Week 2 is on Apple history. So again, these reference documents. This is the content that I'm talking about me taking with me. So it doesn't matter what LMS I teach from, each one for week 2 in this case would feature that content. So that's what I'm trying to do now for VSCO 135, the class I'll be teaching during summer. The same thing that I've done with the last ones, which is clean up that content. So if I go into the week 5, the last version, or VSCO 135, the last one, you can see that it's got all of that basic folder structure and then some extra files that I haven't cleaned up yet. So this will be my very first to-do list, is going into each of these and deciding what is necessary, what I should get rid of, or what's changing, if I'm looking at changing the textbook, and then that will transition into the next step. So I look forward to that and much more next week when we meet face-to-face or virtually if you can't attend face-to-face. With that, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you very much for attending.